Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Experience Advice. We have the pleasure of hosting Stamatia Lorenzo, a recognized psychologist and psychotherapist with expertise working in the community with various mental health presentations. Stamantia has dedicated over a decade to helping individuals navigate their mental health journeys with compassion and evidence-based practice.
Stamatia today, she's here and share her insights on effective therapy, mental health trends, and practical advice for those considering a career in psychology, psychiatrist. We are thrilled to have her on the show. Welcome, Stamatia.
Hi, hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Samantha, can you share your educational journey in psychology, including where did you study and what experience was like?
Yes, of course. I started doing a Bachelor of Science in psychology, which is the first basic degree to start the psychology journey. Then I've done a master's in health psychology. Then I decided to change a little bit career, and I studied psychotherapy and counseling. And I've completed there a diploma and postgraduate diploma in the psychotherapy, mostly the psychodynamic psychotherapy profession. After many years of practicing, then I've done a postgraduate diploma in clinical supervision. And finally, around 2011, I started and completed a doctorate in counseling psychology. So I've got different influences between psychology and psychotherapy.
Wow, and your experience from all of this.
Right. It has been a journey, not initially thinking oh yeah, I want to do psychology, but not really sure what that really means. Once you do the bachelor and the master's, you're like, okay, I want to work more directly with people, because psychology's got so many different kind of fields you can specialize in. But not all of them work directly with people. And then psychotherapy seemed to be, and counseling psychology later on, seemed to be more like the work I wanted to do, working directly with people.
Wow, that's nice. What is your typical process for working with new clients from the first session onwards?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because most people, coming to therapy, for instance, whether it's psychology or psychotherapy, similar experience, they might be kind of anxious, what to expect, how to speak to someone who they never met before and talk about themselves. So the main aim of the first initial consultation, we call it, is just for me and the clients to meet each other and to see whether we can, work together. So we cannot work with all therapists, right? So you might go to a therapist and you feel like, oh, I'm not getting the vibe here. Even if they're really the best, they might have all these credentials and they might be the specialist in the area. But sometimes if we don't fit the energy, somehow there's psychotherapy and psychology and working together is a mutual experience, it's a shared journey. And we need to be able to build trust initially. So my first thing is to explain who I am, listen to what they what they want therapy for, what their aims and objectives from therapy, but also try to get to know each other and build rapport. And then at the end of the initial consultation, we mutually agree together to see whether we can work together, where the therapies, what they need right now. If not, then I will make suggestions for something else, what they might be most appropriate. I also say to my clients, listen, maybe you want to take some time, to think whether this is okay between me and you. If you don't feel that, we can work together, let me know. I can refer you to a colleague that you might feel more able to work.
Yeah, I want to ask you, because some people, they have big issues, and when they go there, they say, oh, Stamatia is not good because they don't want to do the therapy. So you're very right. You say, give time to think about it and all the stuff, because to go there means you have issue, but you're afraid to admit the issue as well. So
yes, people do. Yeah, some people do and some people don't, or some people think they need to stay with this therapist and say, no, you don't. Like we cannot force a connection really, and connection and rapport are the most important things for any work to succeed really. So
Yeah.
Right. So what are your main areas of expertise and how do you develop the focus of these areas?
So main areas of expertise as a therapist is for me to work with people, really. It's like working with people, trying to understand them and to facilitate an environment that they can, think about their concerns. Now, in terms of more expertise in specialist areas, I work with various mental health presentations, but I have the last 17 years I've been working in private practice, and this is various presentations, but I have also been working in the community with more vulnerable adults who may lack a supportive network. And that includes financial and social resources. So people in the community not necessarily able to go and work with someone who they can pay for instance, so we have like through GP surgeries that they can be referred to, low fee schemes, or people who do not have so much support network. They can feel quite lonely. London is not an easy city to be, and I guess different people have different kind of needs. So I'm more like where I have more like developed working this last 17 years in the community. So with whatever presentations, I don't want to say more depression or anxiety or like PTSD. All this comes that as presentations.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm sorry about the noise. Yeah.
It's you have a lovely dog.
As well. Yeah. She's always like when I do online meetings, she's always present, my dog as well.
That's good. Yeah, we have another guest, Jiggly.
Yeah.
Yes. Stamatia, can you walk us through the typical treatment process for a common issue you address?
Right. Like, I don't know what we mean by common issues, and I just want maybe like to find an opportunity to break the myth here in terms of common issues. People usually call common issues depression, anxiety. These are like umbrella terms, and people describe everything. I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious or stressed, right? So these are, let's say, the most common narrative we use in the society to describe, though, various underlying kind of concerns or feelings, like that can be disappointment, that can be like imposter syndrome, it can be I'm not feeling good enough, low self-esteem and all that, or it can be variety of things. It doesn't really matter. What it matters is that each individual is their own person. Even for a common issue, let's say depression or anxiety, each individual would experience that in their own way because they have their own background, their own experiences, their own upbringing. So what I really do to answer your question is first to try to understand the issue from each person, from their perspective. This is very, very important, not to make assumptions because there is an umbrella term like depression or anxiety. Try to help people to see like, okay, depression, what does that really mean for you? How does that look like in your everyday functioning? And this is how then, depending what time the individual wants to spend in kind of working on that. It can be something because a life event happened, like someone lost their job and they cannot find, for a period of time. And this person may have associated their identity and their status and their self-esteem with success at work or with academic success. So we have to look behind that, right? Other people, they may have like always depression or suicidal thoughts or self-destructive kind of behaviors that they think they're self-destructive. Again, it's not me judging what it is, what and labeling. It's mostly like hearing, staying there with the individual and understanding it together. change cannot happen if the individual is not on board, really. I'm just a facilitator in that.
And what is your process like? So you see the treatment is like that, depression, and then how you treat the person upward.
Again, it depends what depression looks like. If someone like they're not coming up, like they're withdrawing, they're isolating themselves, they say like, oh, I don't want to meet with people, you know, I don't want to go out, I find you know, like speaking with people draining, I don't trust. Depression sometimes is masking a lot of other feelings. It can mask self-loathing. So psychiatric terms, unless it's something, a clinical depression that needs also medication, that means like, you know, medication, and they need to meet with a psychiatrist as well, or get some medication from their GP to get the symptoms down a little bit, like to manage the physical symptoms. And then we can then focus on everything else, you know, personal, you know, childhood experiences can be one way of understanding someone's emotional and mental health issues, as well current circumstances.
And you are like friend, like you talk to this person per week once and see, you know.
Okay. In terms of the frequency, yes, it's usually weekly sessions, you know. It can be like some people want 6 sessions, some people want like the contract for a year. Other people have been working with them 8 years, for instance, and we're still digging and finding, like going to different levels. And each time you have the same issue, but you understand them from different layers and perspectives, depending where you want to go. That's individual again. You know, there is no right or wrong. It's a matter of timing. And the matter of resources, you know, so.
It's amazing because it's good everybody to follow psychologists when who have some issues, because some they kill people, some they make suicides without reason. I mean, they think it's a reason, but it's not. So it's good to follow a psychologist, psychiatrist, because we are humans. We have lots of experience, and some they are bad. So we need somebody like you.
I just also want to say that I don't want to give the message out there that everyone needs to see a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a mental health, because some people like they find like solution through spirituality, not solution, but they find comfort through spirituality, through activities, physical activities, through other like through their social networks, through daily kind of activities and hobbies. Now, if they want to invest in themselves to make changes for how they feel about themselves and how they relate to others, I think then this is where psychotherapy and psychology can be also an alternative, I guess. But I don't want to give the message this is the only way, right? You know, because I think people were very resourceful, and we need to trust that we know sometimes better what's going on with ourselves, right? And sometimes even one-off meeting can help, you know, just to understand that and to be that's okay, you know. Now, if there are suicidal thoughts or more kind of clinical presentations, perhaps I would suggest speaking with a professional first to get a bit more of a framework and treatment options before anyone decides to do anything. That would be the best. And again, Samaritans, crisis support helplines in the NHS when someone feels suicidal is also kind of good resources. So don't feel alone, you know, like you're not alone in that, because suicidal ideation can feel quite unsettling. It's not easy to live with that thinking like, I don't like myself, I want to kill myself. So there are support there. There is support. And if you're in that state, I definitely recommend speaking to the professional, even if it's one-off, just to explore options for you.
But of course, globally, like in other countries, because we are in England,
I'm talking about the UK.
Yeah. Because in other countries, I think it's different, the system. You know about that, or?
Yeah, but Samaritans here can be quite a good resource for people, or children, childline, they can speak to. There are many different charities out there. So yeah, and also your GP. GP is quite like first port of contact. or the ambulance if someone feels quite very overwhelmed by that. Please use these resources. People are, trained and they can support. It doesn't mean stigma. It doesn't mean it's gonna be written in your record and then you cannot find work or anything like that. It's all confidential, right? So just wanted to clarify that to your audience too. So
thank you for all your advices. How do you measure and evaluate the progress in a therapy session?
all right. Okay. So in private work, there is no formal kind of evaluation. We say, my supervisor say, the client votes with their feet. That means they come, If they stop coming, that means that things are not working, right? So,
yeah.
But we talk with the client, say, how is this going? And encourage them to always say, if they need anything else, if this approach is working. So it's a continuous kind of evaluation, right? In terms of working, you have a report, and, you talk to them, you ask, how is that for you? And sometimes they come say like, what you said the other time really pissed me off, or I didn't find that helpful. And then we can just talk about that. And that's communication, I don't expect to get everything right, but what we learned from each other there is like actually to be able to communicate. And believe me, lots of issues happen between like relational difficulties because there is not much communication between people. We're scared sometimes to say what we think in a compassionate manner, right? To say like, actually, I did not appreciate what you just said there. It's like, all right, tell me a little bit more about that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand from that perspective. So, and that's how we can go ahead. Having said that, in organizational work where we get funded from organizations, so when the clients don't have to pay, that can be through employee assistance programs. When work has those, you can call for 6 sessions a therapist, and that's work paid by work. There might be a more evaluation process. So it's a bit of a questionnaire that people complete at the beginning when they start seeing me, where they are, and then towards the end of the work. But that's not for the person really, that's more for the funders, because they want to know, what are you guys doing? What am I paying you for? But usually that's more a formal way of evaluating progress. Progress evaluation happens in the therapy room with the person directly talking to each other week by week, what works and what doesn't work.
Wow. I don't know that. What should clients expect regarding confidentiality and privacy in their therapy sessions?
To expect in terms of confidentiality and privacy. So, right. I always say the same little thing, and most clients know by when they come to therapy. So whatever we're discussing here is confidential. So it's between me and you. But if there is a risk to yourself or others, I have a duty of care and will have to share that. I will not do it behind your back, though, and I will, we can find together what would be the best person to inform and what information we need to share. So again, it's a shared kind of mutual shared of confidentiality.
My next question, I want to divide it in 2 parts, if you don't mind. My first part of the question will be, how do you handle challenging cases or clients who might be resistant to the therapy? And also, one of these challenging cases, it has affected you in your personal life, and how do you cope with that emotional impact?
So the first part is challenging clients. I don't like... Well, usually challenging clients, whatever we call them challenging, I don't know what we mean by that. Usually clients, as I said, will be anxious. So anxiety can be misinterpreted with being challenging. So I always come from a perspective, whoever comes to see me, I also feel with a new client, I'm like, I don't know what to expect today, a new client. My long-term clients, we know each other every week, but a new client, a first client session, I don't know what to expect, so I can feel a little bit like, oh, what is it to expect here? But usually, if they can be quite, like short-tempered, or I never had an experience of being abusive, or kind of rude or anything like that. Usually people can be quite anxious. So even if they can be quite like short-tempered, I will understand it from, probably they're in pain. They probably tried a lot of people to get their pain, understood. Usually people get upset when they feel not validated and misunderstood. So I always think from that perspective and try to understand with them, like, what's going on. It might be cases that maybe someone is intoxicated. That's a different story. If they come to therapy intoxicated, we have to say, I'm sorry. Therapy doesn't work like that. I'm not kind of dismissing your concern and everything, but we need someone to be quite present in order to be able to do the work. And when you're intoxicated, you have an altered mind, and I understand maybe you may felt anxious and you had to be intoxicated to calm your nerves down to come, but let's arrange another session, and speak again, kind of thing. So more challenging cases, it will not be in private practice. Only people would be dissatisfied that, I really didn't get anything from that initial consultation. But usually people don't do it to your face, they're not rude. So in the community, though, because some people have been kind of brought into therapy, so I just wanted to say, private practice, usually people, they think they have to come, no one sent them. Maybe a family member suggested to them, but they have a motivation. They pay money in order to make changes. In the community, sometimes it might be like the kind of a court order, or it might be a GP, or maybe, social worker thought like maybe you should go to therapy, to discuss those issues. And there might be more resistance because they don't own the need for them to come to therapy. So again, it's a matter of conversation, understanding why you're here, who sent you, do you agree with that? Is that something you want to do? I then explain, this is what therapy can do and what can do, and it's up to you to decide. So that's how I really will work with that, and offer another follow-up, perhaps in a month's time, for them to think, to see, and they can say, yes, I can come or not.
My second part was, is there any challenging cases that has affected you emotionally, personally, and how do you cope with that emotional impact?
Yes, there are. For confidentiality reasons, I'm not going to explain those because people can be identified, and I don't want that to do so. But what we, as therapists, do, we have our own therapy ourselves, so do go to therapy personally. I'm not doing something that I don't believe it can help me, right? So I think it's quite important to acknowledge that. This is part of our trainings as well. I forgot to say that at the first conversation, that most of the psychotherapy and the counseling psychology trainings require the practitioners to attend personal therapy for over a substantial period of time. And this is because we need to be able to identify, to know what we bring into the equation and understand ourselves. And so therefore, we don't project our own issues to the person who comes to therapy. But we also have supervision, so clinical supervision. So I go and I present my clients, not all of them, but the ones I might find it can be quite, I need some support to think, to move forward, so we're not stuck. So I have a supervisor who's a trained psychotherapist, but also very experienced, and we discuss the cases, and that helps. And whether it's a challenging situation or a situation which is not challenging, but I'm a bit stuck in how to move the therapy forward, we discuss. Again, no names or anything like that, just kind of the process of therapy.
Wow, that's good, because you need to talk the issue if it's affecting you as well, yeah.
And with a supervisor who's a professional as well and technical, can advise me, like, have you thought about that intervention? Or what about that? Or maybe I think they were talking about this, and I'm like, oh, right, okay, let me try, and
Yeah. Stamatia, how do you perceive the evolution of Western society in terms of mental health awareness and treatment options over the years?
Right, that's again very good question. I will be short because I can talk forever on this. I believe that there is a lot of development, at least in the last 10, 15 years, especially it started after the pandemic, following the pandemic. I think more steps towards that have been taken. There is less stigma, I guess, more openness and compassion towards mental health. There is still a long way to go, but I see there is more provision and more awareness out there. Again, there is a lot of way to go, but it's much different than 15 years ago on how we treat mental health issues, the stigma, and the same people feel, you know, like, oh, I have that, and how people treat them. So yeah, I think there is some movement.
I want to ask you what because you say things to go, they need to progress. So which situation progress more, like depression, and which is not progressing, like autism? Which you think is more progressed than before?
No, in terms of present, like, you know, do you mean in terms of kind of treatments regarding those kind of depression or anxiety, or you mean like the society stands towards, because I'm talking more about the society stands towards mental health. In terms of treatment, right. In terms of treatments, you know, everything is moving. There is always new research and new developments, but there is more awareness, like, you know, more services available, specialist services available for people now to be referred to and signposted. There has been an increase in terms of neurodiverse, so neurodivergent people, and assessment and understanding and adjustments around neurodiversity, which I think is very useful, but is a very long way to go because it's only recent kind of 3, 4, 5 years that this has been happening. And it's not just mental health provision needs to change, but societal ways of working. Even educational systems need to change to work with neurodiversity. For depression, anxiety, PTSD, EMDR now is a little bit more kind of, you know, on the rise and offered more widely for people with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression and anxiety, as well as other conditions. There are still developments and more resources available. So,
yeah.
So what role do family and support system play in the therapy process, and how do you involve them in your sessions?
Yeah, that's a very good question again, because therapy is an individual, like, you know, an individual kind of journey, right? So, but sometimes the family might be worried about their loved ones and they just say, go to therapy, or they want to, sometimes they even want to come and intervene, and just, we really try to keep them out from the individual sessions, right? Because you don't want that pressure on the individual who wants to change. Having said that, there are other types of therapies like systemic or family therapy, that then there is an issue within the family that also can be a good option for the family to be involved. So I want to separate the individual therapy. The person comes and they can, you know, take accountability for their own development and journey. If there is a systemic issue, then family therapy, especially when there are children involved, that I would recommend that. And then we also have couples therapy. And the couple can just go and explore that. Usually in couples therapy, there's also recommendations for people to have individual therapy at the same time, because couple therapy only works with the couple dynamics and the communication, but not with the individual issues. So there are options depending what type of therapy. There is also group therapy. I forgot to say that. There is group therapy when people go there and, you know, they're not just, it's going to be only one therapist, but there are other people around like-minded, probably in the same pain. So like talking to each other with a trained facilitator can help with interpersonal difficulties.
Stamatia, how do you stay current with developments in psychology? Can you share any recent trends or research that you find particularly interesting?
So, clearly all of my colleagues and every psychotherapist and psychologist, we are registered members of professional bodies, right? And we have journals we read all the time. We also attend continuous professional development courses, and we call them CPDs. This is part of our registration. So in order to be a registered therapist or a psychologist, you need to yearly meet certain kind of training criteria, including supervision and readings, as well as small trainings, right? So that's how we, keep updated, I guess. It's part of the job to keep updated. Any trends now, like, as I said, the EMDR is a big thing, like for post-traumatic stress disorder. Neuroscience recently, like, is really kind of a big development that starts to inform, like, our practice with people. So again, this is ongoing, and there are links between what we eat and our mental health, for instance, loads of things, but I can talk forever, really. But keep those EMDR, neurodivergent kind of clients, and neuroscience.
Can you provide some practical tips or strategies for listeners to maintain their mental well-being in their lives?
So, yeah, mental well-being. How do we all do that? Like, first of all, we need to be able to, focus on ourselves, right? I think it's very, very important, because being in London, I'm talking in particular about in the big cities, it can be very hectic, and there is not much space left for us or much thinking time. So I guess whether it's a hobby, it's not one particular way of doing things. It can be a hobby, it can be, mindfulness and meditation, it can be exercise, all those kind of practical things, but we ensure we put them in place. It can be yoga, you name it. I think it's an individual preference, right? Not everyone wants to do everything. The important part is to allocate that time for you, and not be like, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have time to eat properly, I don't have time to do this. Because then you get into this kind of circle of going round and round and round, without, like, charging your battery. So the important part is to charge our battery sometimes, and not to think we have endless energy. Although in London it's very difficult to forget that. So that would be one part on a daily kind of well-being. Now, when things happen, though, these activities might not be enough, right? Because it might be a life event, or something that happened at work in our personal life may have triggered anxiety or thoughts that, negative thinking. I think it will be good to then ask support from a professional, like to discuss further options. So I don't want to be very generic here, because every individual, again, is their own person with their own lifestyle and experiences.
Wow, yeah, that's good. And what experience advice would you give to someone interested in pursuing a career that you're doing, psychology? And what steps should they take to succeed in this field?
Well, success would be, like, for every field, is like, go for it, and, like, kind of love what you want to do. So in order to do this profession, I guess you want to work with people, but also want to separate between psychotherapy and psychology. So I'm going to give two different advice, if that's okay. I'll start with the psychology. So there are many different fields that people can study. First, they have to do a bachelor. You cannot do anything in the UK by master's if you have not done the first 3 years, a bachelor in psychology, right? And then you can do a master's in an area like, or a doctorate, like clinical and counseling psychology. They're only doctorates that they can lead to a registration, right? So in order to practice either as a psychotherapist or a psychologist, you need to be registered with a professional body, right? Because I hear many people say, yeah, I've done this 2-year counseling course, listening skills. This is good, but there's not going to be registered. And if you are not registered, then I guess you cannot practice as the profession with that title. And the psychologist, being a psychologist is a protected term. You have to be registered with HCPC and you need to follow a specific program. So clinical and counseling psychology is only through a doctorate kind of studies, usually 3 to 4 years, depending part-time or full-time. They work with people directly, right? But we also have organizational psychology or educational psychology or social psychology or health psychology. Again, all of those require a level of doctorate kind of training in order to qualify to be registered with a professional body. Of course, you can do a bachelor and of course you can do masters, and then you can still be registered, but you will need, if you don't go through the educational route, there is an individual route. So you just do the masters, but then you have to 3-4 years to do the work you need to do with a supervisor to sign you off that you have accumulated the hours and the criteria that you can be registered with HCPC and the BPS, which is the British Psychological Society. Then and
the psychiatrist.
And the psychotherapy, then again, there is a different route because it's more experiential. So like for psychotherapy, it's more about your work and with people directly, right? So psychology, unless you do clinical or counseling, organizational, you work with organizations, with systems. Neuropsychology, again, with research, is not direct work with people. Psychotherapy is direct work with people. And usually, before any course accepts you, you need to show that you have some experience in working with people directly. It doesn't have to be psychotherapy or counseling. It can be a caring profession, can be a nursing profession, or it can be just like volunteering with Samaritans or Childline, with being a key worker in a hostel, like all of these, working with people in one-to-one to show that you are able to build rapport with people is a prerequisite. And then you can go on a course, usually they start with a diploma that then becomes postgraduate or a master's. And you can choose between cognitive behavioral therapy, humanistic perspective, psychodynamic, integrative, psychoanalytic, couple therapy, group therapy, you name it. But it's down to the individual to know, to where they want to go, like which area interests them, I think that's the main thing. And success would be, you need to have patience. You're not gonna get successful from since you just qualified. You can make money, yes, if you're a psychotherapist, but it depends though, the time you have, given to your profession.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Stamatia, for having you today. It's been a pleasure and very, insights. We learn a lot of you today about psychology. See you next time, guys, and please subscribe in your channel.